Welcome to TopSpot40 Music Docuseries, where we bring the stories behind the music to life.
The first notes of a Juan Gabriel song have a way of stopping you where you stand. That voice carries such naked feeling that you suddenly remember exactly where you were the first time you heard it, who you were with, and what your heart was going through at the time. He was born with nothing but trouble at home. His father never recovered from a devastating accident, and his mother, left with too many mouths to feed, had to make an impossible choice. She placed her small son in an orphanage in Juárez. The little boy who would become Juan Gabriel spent the next several years of his life behind those walls. Most children there cried themselves to sleep. He sang them to sleep instead. Using an old piano the nuns kept in a corner, he taught himself chords by listening to whatever music drifted in from the street. At night, he would play and sing until the crying stopped. The other orphans called him the Little Nightingale. Years later, he would say those lullabies were his first real audience, and that every love song he ever wrote still carried the ache of a child trying to comfort other children who had no one else. That single memory explains the tenderness you hear in everything he recorded. He never sang at you, he sang for you, the way he once sang for scared kids in the dark. When he finally left the orphanage, he headed straight into the cantinas of Juárez, especially one called El Noa Noa. The place was rough, the pay was almost nothing, and the audience sometimes threw bottles when they didn't like a singer. But something about the boy with the high emotional voice made them set their drinks down. He began writing songs on napkins between sets, turning the stories he overheard at the bar into melodies. One regular told him, "Kid, you sing like you've already lived 3 lifetimes." The owner eventually let him rename the show after a song he wrote about that very club. That little Juárez bar became the place where his style first caught fire, flashy, tender, impossible to categorize. Success, when it came, arrived with strings attached. Record executives loved the voice but wanted him to tone down the colorful clothes, the dramatic gestures, the unapologetic emotion. One producer actually told him to sing like a man. He tried for about 5 minutes, then went back to being exactly who he was. That refusal became one of the most important decisions of his life. Because he wouldn't bend, his music reached people who had also been told they were too much, too soft, too different. In a macho culture that often kept its feelings locked away, here was a man crying openly on television, dancing with pure joy, and daring everyone to feel everything at full volume. There's a night every true fan remembers, even if they weren't there. The Palacio de Bellas Artes in Mexico City had stood for nearly a century as the temple of classical music. No ranchera singer had ever been allowed through its doors. When Juan Gabriel was finally invited to perform there, it felt like the whole country held its breath. Tickets disappeared in minutes. On opening night, the ushers watched in amazement as thousands of working-class fans, many of whom had never set foot in the building, arrived dressed in their finest clothes, clutching handkerchiefs. He walked on stage in a white charro suit covered in silver embroidery and proceeded to give one of the most emotional performances of his life. By the end, people in the expensive seats were weeping openly alongside the fans in the upper balconies. That concert didn't just break a rule, it announced that the people's music belonged in the people's palace. He sold out the hall for multiple nights, each one more triumphant than the last. His mother lived long enough to see all of it. The boy she had to surrender eventually bought her a house and filled it with the family she had lost. He wrote her a song so personal that even he could barely get through it. When he performed it, his voice would crack with the same pain he had carried since childhood. That song became the one people play when they want to tell their own mothers everything they never found the words to say. To this day, in cemeteries across Latin America on Mother's Day, you will hear it drifting between the graves like a prayer. What people loved most about him was how completely human he remained. He would perform for 3.5 hours, then stand at the stage door signing autographs until 2 in the morning because these are the people who fed me when I was hungry. He gave away cars, paid for surgeries, built schools, and never made a show of it. In interviews, he laughed easily, often at himself, and spoke about his orphanage years without bitterness, only gratitude that music had rescued him. That combination of glamour and genuine humility was irresistible. One moment he was gliding across the stage in an outrageous feathered cape. The next he was telling a story about eating beans every night as a child. You believed every word. His songs still feel like conversations with an old friend who understands both the highest highs and the lowest lows. Put on almost any track and within 30 seconds you're smiling or remembering or reaching for someone's hand. That's the gift he perfected in those orphanage nights, singing scared children to sleep. He turned his own loneliness into a language that millions of us now share. Even though the man is gone, the voice remains stubbornly alive. You hear it at family parties, in cars with the windows down, at quinceañeras and weddings and quiet evenings when someone needs to feel less alone. Young singers still study his phrasing. Grandmothers still cry when his biggest ballads come on the radio. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, I like to think there's a little boy playing an old piano, smiling because he finally made it home and the whole world is singing along. That's the real Juan Gabriel story, not the fame or the outfits or the sold-out halls, but the orphan who decided feelings were meant to be shared at full volume. Put his music on today. I promise, within the first chorus, you'll understand why so many of us still call him home.
Thank you for joining us for TopSpot40 Music docuseries. Discover all the stories behind the music at TopSpot40.com. Until next time, keep the music playing.